Hello and welcome to the strategy call for Strategic Speaking for Results and the Visible and Valued Training Month. This is the first of two calls with questions and answers. And unfortunately, we had some challenges. We had some internet problems and connection problems. So I was not able to record the live version. I had several people who couldn't get on, but who sent me email questions. So I'm going to address them here, and then hopefully those of you who are listening, you're listening to the recording. We are halfway through the month of November, which is when I'm giving the free trainings. So we have already put out 2 podcast episodes. One's called Speaking Strategies to Get Better Results, basically how you get your strategy together to use presentation skills to become more visible and more valued by those who could give you a promotion. So it's how you get hired. How do you become someone to follow? How do you become the person who then gets promoted? The second one was writing a script that wows, because I've seen lots of other speaker trainers presentation skills trainers, who don't address the things that I address. And one of the things that really don't address is, how do you actually write the script? So I will put links to those in the comments below this where we post this. I particularly recommend, if you are thinking about having a signature speech, check out writing a script that wows. This is something I've done with many, many clients, but I'd never recorded it before. To answer some of the questions that have come in, I have here a page of questions. Druja complains that she's not listened to in her meetings, and the men around her shut her down. What we had talked about, so Druja, for you, check out some of the techniques we talked about in the strategy call. That's the first of the 4 podcasts. What you can mostly do is enroll an ally. See if there's someone who can help you to echo what you say. If you're not being listened to, I think you mentioned that you were the only woman. If you're not being listened to, who are your buddies? Who are your people you're friendly with? Who are your coworkers who are in these same meetings, who will then say, "Thank you, Druja. What a great idea. Thank you so much for saying that." One of the things, and let's hope that you will be clear and concise when you're talking about it. One of the things that happens a lot in business is you get single-focused people who are either male or female, but people who really are focused on one thing. And then you get the multi-focused people who can think of lots of different things and who think of all sorts of things at once. And the two will never be able to understand each other. Some people say that men are single-focused and women are multi-focused, and it does seem to be more men on one side and women on the other side, but not at all. I have quite a few male clients who are multi-focused, and I have quite a few female clients who are single-focused. I can be single-focused. It depends on the day. It depends on the situation. The easiest thing to do is to assume that the single-focused people are speaking a different language if you're multi-focused, and vice versa. There's a great deal to know about it, but don't expect to understand each other. Druja, from the long email that you sent me, it sounds to me like you are multi-focused. You're having a trouble being clear about what it is, what your points are. And so you lose the attention of your listeners. So the first suggestion is get an ally and make sure that whenever they say something, you say, thank you, Joe. That's a good idea. And then Joe will say, thank you, Drusha. I liked what you had to say, or that's a very good point. People need to hear things 2 or 3 times before they get them. And then make sure that if you are speaking to the single focus people, that you are clear and concise. The second thing is to be clear and concise. The third thing is to include the benefits. My suggestion is, if we go ahead with this project, this is what we will get. So if you can talk about the problem, the solution, and the benefit, that's going to help a lot. Try to anticipate the yeah, but moments, the places where people are going to push back. They may not have a big objection, but they'll have a little, yeah, but what about this or that? Try to make sure that you always have an answer for those, and that will help. So those 3 are what I would suggest. And go back and listen to the strategy call. There's a lot more about that. Now, Henry wrote to me, and he said he knew he wasn't going to be able to be on the call today. And he said he's been trying to figure out a speech that he can do. That's going to be the way he's going to show up in his community and in his organization. He's looking for a signature speech, and he's got too many topics. So Henry, my suggestion to you is, if you have too many topics, write them all down. Just write them all down, put it up on a poster on the wall or a whiteboard or something that you can look at. Don't do this on the computer. You want to do it by hand first. It's going to really matter, because you're going to want to see the whole expanse of all these ideas. Write them all down. Don't edit, just write. And when you think you've gotten to all of them, put the list somewhere where you can look at it and start thinking about how all these ideas would fit into topics. See if you can narrow them down. Another way to do this is to write them, sort of group them into groups. Maybe you use colored Post-it notes. So maybe you've got 3 topics. So you've got the yellow Post-it notes, the green Post-it note, and the pink Post-it note. Have all 3 topics, how each of these would fit into your 3 main talking points, not necessarily topics, talking points. Organize them by color. And if you have a point that will fit into more than one talking point, if you've got an idea, that might be a transitional point. That might be something that could take you from talking point A to talking point B. You might find that you're going to group it into 5 overall categories and 3 outliers. If you have the outliers, you can just put them aside. They will be on a different speech. Don't lose them, but maybe they don't belong into this speech. And then see if you can organize them. I would recommend going back and listening to Writing a Script That Wows. I discuss how one can do that. I think that would be very useful for you. And since you're a VIP, you get a chance to ask me questions again. So go try that and tune in again on November 30th for the second strategy call. And let's see what you've come up with. Juanita, my friend Juanita wrote to me, and she got pulled into a meeting at the last minute. So she wants to speak. Also, Marita wrote to me. She wants to speak, but she doesn't know where. We will be having a call, the 4th call in this series of 4 is how do busy executives get booked? with Whitney McDuff, who is a PR, has a PR service, and she gets people booked. In the meantime, remember I said that rule number one is to make it about them. Who's your audience? Think about if you know any groups where you're going to find your audience. Are there conferences that you can go to? Are there conferences, and it could be a specific conference for just specifically for your industry, or it could be a conference for a portion of your industry where people from your industry are going to show up. And one of the easiest ways to find those is look at the ones you've been invited to. Look at people you know who are also in your industry and see which conferences they've gone to. Ask about the conferences that they've been to. You can also find speakers in your industry who are people you've heard, for instance. Who have you listened to? Look at their social media feeds and say, where else have they spoken? Do a Google search. Where else have they spoken? For instance, I do work with international lawyers, teams of lawyers, especially women. So I look for conferences in international law or women's conferences. An international law conference that has a track for women, or women's conferences that has a track for lawyers. Those are lots of places. And then you can apply. Now, you will, of course, have figured out what your speech is first, but apply for that. So Marita and Juanita, I hope that was helpful for you. The other thing is, if you think about podcasts you listen to, are there podcasts that also speak to your ideal audience or close enough? Then apply to be a speaker on the podcasts and tell the world about it. I used to think that you could find the podcasts that your customers would be listening to and address them directly on the podcast. But nowadays, there are so many podcasts. Find ones that sound interesting. Find ones that are speaking to your audience, the people you want to reach. Apply to speak on it, and then tell your ideal clients or the people in your organization, once you've been on the podcast, then you advertise it to the people you specifically want to reach. There's a lot more about this, but that should give you a start. And I had one other question. Where was it? So Sumit wrote to me, and he's got a very specific niche. I've got like three Sumits in my group. It's wonderful. This particular Sumit wrote to me, and he has a very specific group he wants to reach. So we were working on, he and I have been talking about how to get him to these very specific conferences. The other thing that Sumit and I are working about is finding good titles. What's a good title? You want a catchy title because it's marketing. That's the other thing, is that giving an informational talk is a great marketing tool. And yes, hopefully people will learn from what you have to say, but really it's about being visible, speaking up, showing up. Even if you aren't ready, just step forward and do that. So that would be my advice to you, Sumit, for your very specific niche. Find the people who are doing it. Find out who's already speaking there or who has spoken there in the past. Make a list and then get back to me. We can talk about that. Those are the questions that have come up. Today is November 16th, 2021. This week, we have more tips coming up about how to be how to make your speech more interesting. I have a podcast episode called From Transform Your Speech from Boring to Bravo, which is how to spice up your presentations once you've got the basic outline. And then we will be broadcasting an interview I did a while ago with my colleague, Cindy Ashton, who talks about using your voice, the tactics of speaking from the point of view for someone who is an expert in voice. And next week, of course, we're talking about how do you get booked. So please tune in. I'm sorry we had the technical issues today. I hope this will work out for you. I hope this will be useful. If you have any questions, reach out to me at elizabethbachman.com. Or if you're one of the people who got the email about it, just answer the email and I will see if I can answer your question. This has been Strategic Speaking for Results, the strategy call number 1 for the Visible and Valued Training Program. I'm Elizabeth Bachman. I'll see you on the next one.